All right, so there's a little break in the video, and that's because um, weirdly my camera just decided to like shut down on me. So what I was talking about was heaters. Heaters take way more energy than air conditioners to work. So if we're running our heaters in a place like Colorado, where we need that heat energy and all that we're relying on is solar, well, one, during the winter, the sun's not out as much, so it's going to not give us as much energy in the first place. And then two, I'm going to be using more energy throughout the day. So that energy is going to be depleted quicker, and we're going to have rolling blackouts. And then we're going to have to run into problems of our pipes going to burst. Is it going to get too cold in our homes to live? Do we have a fireplace? How are we going to stay warm? Now, solar's great, but it's not great as a full-on, like, this is the answer. It has to be used in conjunction or in addition to fossil fuels, because those fossil fuels are great at warming up. Those fossil fuels are really, really good at warming things up, way better than what solar could do for us. And then our third type of renewable energy would be wind power. Now, this is when we use the wind to produce mechanical power through turbines to produce electrical energy. So those turbines are producing mechanical power, which is then producing energy and in the form of electricity. And very first, to start off, these things are disgusting. Like, they're so nasty to look at. And more than that, they're also disgusting for our environment. Now, people say their wind energy, they're using a free renewable energy. But like I said before, if we have to use non-renewables in order to create the renewables, they no longer are non-renewable. They're no longer renewable. They now become non-renewable energy sources. Because I cannot make a wind turbine without fossil fuels. Let me explain. Wind turbines require oil. Now, I'm not talking about to power them. In their gearboxes, they have oil to lubricate, but I'm talking about to build them. Now, we're not going to go into a lot of detail, but let's look at a few things. So the steel required to build the wind turbines requires oil to be manufactured. Not just to be manufactured, but to be shipped. So the ships that carry the steel overseas, they require oil to travel. The trains require oil or fuel to travel. The trucks, the semis, fuel and oil. We're using fossil fuels to transfer the steel that's going to go into building our wind turbines. So right there, we are using a non-renewable energy or fossil fuels in order to build our renewable energy, which means it's not green. It is not green because we're using fossil fuels. Now, the concrete foundations. In order to fire the concrete in the kiln, you have to use non-renewable resources or fossil fuels. The blades have to be transported on semis or trains, which, guess what? Burn fossil fuels. So pretty much every aspect except for the wind turbine actually turning once it's set up requires fossil fuels to go into wind energy. The only part of wind energy that does not require a fossil fuel is when it is standing up, spinning in the field, and then it requires wind, which if there's not wind, we're kind of hosed again. These are all requiring on wind and these things to work. And then at the end of the day, when those things all break, they go and sit in the landfills. They don't decompose. They are horrible after they're done producing energy or what little energy they do. They're horrible for our environment because we love talking about plastic bags, plastic straws, plastic bottles. And yes, those do all end up in the ocean, which is super bad for our wildlife. But these then end up in the ground, which is super bad for our ecosystems, for our water tables. So, I mean, at the end of the day, wind energy is dripping in fossil fuels. They use non-decomposable materials to build it, and they're going to be around for hundreds of years after they're done, just sitting in landfills. So I'm glad that we're using that renewable energy that's so good for our environment, because otherwise, where would we be at with our energy that we know can be used? And now we're going to go back to that fourth one that we skipped, which is nuclear power. A lot of times this is referred to as clean energy. And up front, that would be a yes, but we need to take a look closer. Nuclear power is considered a non-renewable energy source. This is because we have to produce it and it won't be around forever. Nuclear power is not renewable. People classify it as that because they say it's clean, but that's where we get tripped up here. Renewable versus non-renewable is not clean versus unclean energy, because nuclear power is non-renewable, but it's one of the cleanest energies we have, at least up front. Now, we need to look at, how did the plant get constructed? A lot of non-renewable fossil fuels. What happens to all the nuclear waste? And before we talk about that, just nuclear waste. Nuclear waste. I don't think I need to say any more about that, but at some point, where are we going to put all that if we want to go to nuclear power? Like, we have to deal with the nuclear waste, which a lot of people like to make the comparison of, well, yeah, it might use oil and stuff to do it, but would you like to sit in a room with the smog produced from like a power plant? Well, would you like to sit in a room with the nuclear waste produced from a nuclear power plant? I think I'd rather take the smog. It'll mess up my lungs a little bit, but I'm not going to grow a third arm. Now you want to grow a third arm anyways, but you know what I'm trying to get at. I'd rather take the smoke over the nuclear waste that makes things where you can't live. If we have a nuclear spill, that's way worse than an oil spill. A nuclear spill makes things uninhabitable for years and years and decades. An oil spill, well, it's bad, but you can continue to go on living there once it's cleaned up. Nuclear waste can't just be cleaned up and then disposed of. If it spills, it's there. And I know one of the arguments you're going to get is there's a lot of regulations, there's a lot of rules on it. Well, there is on oil too. There's a lot of regulations on the transport, but accidents happen. And if we go more and more and more in nuclear, the more volume of waste we have, the more likelihood it is there will be an accident. And if there's an accident in a town, that town might not be fit to be inhabited anymore. And then we're going to start losing places. Now, I hope and pray, I pray that that would never happen, but it's a reality we have to face and something that people don't talk about. So at the end of the day, renewable or non-renewable? That's the big question here, and the real answer is both. Now, I know it's going to be diehard, you have to be one side or the other, but in all reality, both are okay. Now, fossil fuels are awesome. I love fossil fuels. They warm my house, they cool my house. But also, there's a place for hydropower, wind power, and solar power. Now, God provided all these things for us to use. He didn't just provide fossil fuels for energy. He provided renewable energy as well, wind, solar, and hydro. And he's given us these to use, but we have to be wise with them. So we can't just use them all quickly. We need to use what we need, because greed and gluttony can cause us to use our resources too quickly. Now, you don't need to crank your AC down to 50 degrees in the summer. We can be wise still and take care of our planet. We need to take care of our planet. It's a wonderful gift. It's a beautiful gift that God has given us. That doesn't mean that we can't use oil and coal, though. What it means is we should really take parts in, we should go plant trees. We should conserve nature, the beauty that God gave us. Why is it looked down upon if we do want to conserve nature? God gave us that nature. He gave us those beautiful things for us to look at and enjoy and be a part of. So conservation is a huge thing that us as Christians, we should be such a big part of, because we need that to see how God created our planet and in all of his glory and majesty. And I just want you to remember, God gives us what we need. He gave us coal, He gave us oil, He gave us natural gas. We can use them. It is not bad to use those things, but it is also not bad to use hydro, wind, and solar. It is not bad to use any of the resources. Choose what works best for you. Just know, like, there's not one that's going to, like, save us. There's not, the renewable isn't going to be like, oh yeah, our planet is saved. Because non-renewable too, fossil fuels, like, our planet's going to be okay. We're going to be all right. We're not going to go into the, we're not going to burn our planet up. And remember that we are living on God's wonderful creation. It's our responsibility to take care of the earth we call home. So let's stop fighting over trees. Like, if you cut a tree down, plant a new one. God gave us those trees. Replace what you take. It's as easy as that. If you take a tree, put a tree. If you take a tree, take a penny, leave a penny. Take a tree, leave a tree. Go for it. Now, building huge cities, be happy to live not in a huge city where we have to destroy huge parts of God's creations. Now, if you live in a big city, I'm not saying you're a bad person. I'm just saying there's so much stuff that a lot of times people in big cities are blaming global warming and climate change on others, when in reality, it's like, look where you're living. You're giving out a lot of, like, you're destroying the landscape that God created for us. Don't worry about your carbon footprint. You're going to be fine. Carbon is in our earth. There's carbon everywhere. Your carbon footprint is not going to destroy us. You living in a huge city is not going to destroy us. You living on a farm is not going to destroy us. Just enjoy God's creation. Take care of our earth. Remember that it was made beautiful for us and that God creates beautiful things and we don't need to go in and try and make it better. God created it. Let's take care of it. I love you all, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next episode.